The Democratic Republic of Congo, one of the most resource-rich countries on Earth, is also home to one of the deadliest conflicts in modern history. Since the late 1990s, over 6 million people have lost their lives, and millions more endure violence, displacement, and exploitation. Despite its staggering human cost, this war rarely makes headlines. Yet it quietly fuels the global economy. From the phone in your hand to the car that you drive, Congo's vast natural wealth powers the modern world. Its reserves of cobalt, coltan, copper, and gold are essential for everything from smartphones to electric vehicles. But this immense wealth has also made Congo a target. For decades, foreign governments, armed militias, and even neighboring countries have exploited its resources, plunging the nation into cycles of war and suffering. To understand how Congo became trapped in this crisis, we must go back to the beginning, the era of colonialism. It was during this time that the seeds of exploitation and division were planted, setting the stage for the conflicts that continue to ravage the country today. Congo's story of exploitation and suffering began in 1885, when King Leopold II of Belgium claimed the region as his personal colony, the Congo Free State. Unlike other colonies, which were governed by European states, Congo was Leopold's private property. His goal was simple: extraction. Under Leopold's rule, Congo became one of the world's largest suppliers of rubber, a resource in high demand for tires, machinery, and industrial expansion. To maximize profits, Leopold's agents imposed a regime of unimaginable cruelty. Millions of Congolese were forced into brutal labor, with quotas so high that failure to meet them often resulted in severed hands or execution. The human cost was catastrophic. An estimated 10 million people, half the population, died during Leopold's reign. The sheer scale of the atrocities eventually drew international outrage. In 1908, under mounting pressure, Belgium took control of Congo, ending Leopold's personal rule. However, while the worst excesses of his regime came to an end, the exploitative economic system remained intact. Congo's vast resources, gold, copper, diamonds, and uranium, continued to be extracted for foreign profit, while the Congolese people saw little benefit. One of the most striking examples of this exploitation was uranium. During World War II, 80% of the uranium used in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs came from Congo's Shinkolobwe mine. But despite providing the raw material for the world's most powerful weapons, Congo itself remained deeply underdeveloped. There was little investment in infrastructure, education, or governance, leaving the country impoverished and vulnerable. By the 1950s, the Congolese people had endured decades of exploitation and neglect. The demand for independence grew louder, fueled by a rising wave of nationalism across Africa. In 1960, Congo finally gained independence from Belgium, and Patrice Lumumba was elected as its first prime minister. Lumumba was a charismatic and visionary leader who dreamed of a Congo where its vast resources would benefit its people, not foreign powers. But his vision posed a direct threat to Western interests, and his rise to power set the stage for a tragic unraveling. Just weeks after independence, the mineral-rich region of Katanga, backed by Belgian mining companies, declared secession. This move plunged the fledgling nation into chaos. Congo's new army, poorly trained and deeply divided, was unable to quell the rebellion. As the country teetered on the brink of collapse, Lumumba turned to the Soviet Union for support, a decision that sealed his fate. To the United States and Belgium, his alignment with the Soviets made him a dangerous communist threat. In 1961, historical accounts suggest that he was captured, tortured, and executed by forces with ties to Belgium and the CIA. His body was reportedly dissolved in acid, erasing any physical trace of him. Lumumba's assassination marked the end of Congo's brief experiment with democracy and the beginning of decades of dictatorship and decay. With Lumumba gone, the U.S. and its allies installed Mobutu Sese Seko, a military officer who would rule Congo for the next 32 years. In 1971, Mobutu renamed the country Zaire, reflecting his efforts to Africanize the nation and distance it from its colonial past. Under his leadership, the country became a kleptocracy, a state where corruption was the norm. Billions of dollars in foreign aid and mining revenue flowed into Mobutu's personal accounts, while the country's infrastructure, education, and healthcare systems crumbled. For decades, Mobutu's regime was propped up by the West. As long as he opposed communism, the US and its allies turned a blind eye to his corruption and human rights abuses. But Mobutu's grip on power began to weaken in the 1990s, as the Cold War ended and global priorities shifted. Then, in 1994, a catastrophic event in neighboring Rwanda would send shockwaves through the region, further destabilizing Congo and setting the stage for one of the deadliest conflicts in modern history, the Rwandan Genocide. The roots of the genocide lie in the colonial era. When Belgium took control of Rwanda after World War I, it institutionalized a divide between the Hutu, which amounted to about 85% of the population, and the Tutsi, which was 14%. The Belgians, however, favored the Tutsi, claiming they were more European due to their taller stature and narrower facial features. This belief stemmed from the racist Hamitic hypothesis, which suggested that the Tutsi were a superior race more suited for leadership. As a result, the Belgians placed the Tutsi in positions of power, granting them preferential access to education and employment opportunities, further solidifying their social and economic dominance over the Hutu majority. This created deep resentment among the Hutus. After Rwanda gained independence in 1962, the Hutus took power and began persecuting Tutsis. Tens of thousands were killed or forced into exile, and by the 1990s, tensions reached a breaking point. On April 6, 1994, the plane carrying Rwanda's Hutu president, Juvenal Habyarimana, was shot down over Kigali. Hutu extremists blamed the Rwandan Patriotic Front, the RPF, a Tutsi rebel group led by Paul Kagame, and used the attack as a pretext to launch a genocide. Over the next 100 days, between 800,000 and 1 million people, mostly Tutsis, were slaughtered. By July 1994, Kagame's RPF took control of Rwanda and ended the genocide. But the violence didn't stop. It spilled into neighboring Congo. After the genocide, over 2 million Hutu refugees fled into eastern Congo. Among them were the very people who had committed the genocide. Hutu extremist militias, now called the FDLR, which stands for the Forces Democratique de Libération du Rwanda. From refugee camps, these militias launched attacks on Rwanda, trying to regain power. Rwanda, citing security threats, responded by invading Congo. In 1996, Rwanda and Uganda backed a Congolese rebel leader, Laurent Desire Kabila, to overthrow the longtime dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. By then, Mobutu's regime was collapsing under the weight of corruption, economic decline, and the loss of Western support after the Cold War. Meanwhile, the aftermath of the 1994 Rwandan genocide had reshaped regional dynamics. Rwanda and Uganda sought to eliminate Hutu militias hiding in eastern Zaire. To achieve this, they helped form the Alliance of Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Congo, the AFDL, which was led by Kabila with Rwandan and Ugandan military support. Kabila's forces launched an offensive in October 1996, rapidly advancing across the country. Mobutu's army, poorly trained and demoralized, offered little resistance. By May 1997, the rebels had reached Kinshasa. Mobutu, suffering from cancer and abandoned by allies, fled to Morocco, where he later passed away. On May 17, 1997, Kabila declared himself president and renamed the country the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Once in power, Kabila quickly turned against Rwanda and Uganda, accusing them of exploiting Congo's resources. In 1998, he expelled their troops, triggering a second invasion as Rwanda and Uganda backed new rebel groups, including the Rally for Congolese Democracy, the RCD, and the Movement for the Liberation of Congo, the MLC. This war spiraled into a multinational conflict, dragging in 9 African countries and countless rebel factions. At its peak, the war involved Angola, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Chad, Libya, Rwanda, Uganda, Sudan, and Burundi, all fighting over Congo's land and resources. As the war raged on, Kabila became increasingly isolated and paranoid. His former allies had turned against him, And even within his own government, there were growing tensions. In an effort to consolidate power, he purged rivals and distanced himself from those he once relied on. This only deepened instability within his administration. On January 16, 2001, Kabila was assassinated inside the presidential palace in Kinshasa. He was shot at close range by one of his own bodyguards, Rachidi Kasareka, a member of his personal security team. The assassin was immediately killed, leaving the true motives behind the attack unclear. Many believe it was part of a larger conspiracy involving high-ranking officials and foreign interests. His sudden death marked a turning point in Congolese politics. Following his assassination, his son Joseph Kabila was quickly installed as president to maintain stability. Under Joseph's leadership, a fragile peace process began, leading to the official end of the war in 2003. However, the war had already left over 5 million people dead, mostly from disease, starvation, and violence, making it the deadliest conflict since World War II. Despite the official peace, armed groups continued to fight over Congo's vast resources, keeping the country in a state of prolonged instability. One of the most infamous groups to emerge from the war in the Democratic Republic of Congo was the M23, a rebel group backed by Rwanda and, to a lesser extent, Uganda. Formed in 2012, the M23 traces its origins to the Congolese Tutsi militias that fought alongside Rwanda during the First and Second Congo Wars in the 1990s. The group was named after the failed March 23, 2009 peace agreement, which promised to integrate Tutsi fighters into the Congolese army, but was never fully implemented. The M23 accused the Congolese government of marginalizing Tutsi communities, failing to protect them from ethnic violence, and violating the terms of the peace deal. The M23's fighters were well-trained and heavily armed, thanks to Rwandan and Ugandan support. Many of its members were former officers of the Congolese army who had defected, bringing with them valuable military experience. In November 2012, the M23 launched its most daring offensive, seizing the city of Goma, a major economic hub in eastern Congo with a population of over 1 million. Despite the presence of thousands of UN peacekeepers, the capture of Goma was a massive humiliation for the Congolese government, exposing its weakness against a relatively small but highly organized rebel force. However, the victory was short-lived. Under international pressure, Rwanda and Uganda withdrew their support, forcing the M23 to retreat. By 2013, the group was militarily defeated after a joint offensive by Congolese and UN forces, and many of its members fled into Rwanda and Uganda. The Congolese government declared victory, but the deeper issues remained unresolved. After nearly a decade of dormancy, the M23 resurfaced in late 2021, launching a new offensive. Once again, the group cited the Congolese government's failure to implement the 2009 peace agreement and protect Tutsi communities from ethnic violence, particularly attacks by Hutu militias linked to the Rwandan genocide perpetrators. But this time, they returned with greater firepower and organization, rapidly capturing strategic towns and military bases in North Kivu province. UN reports have provided clear evidence of Rwandan military support, including troops and weapons crossing the border to aid the rebels. Rwanda, however, denies any involvement, dismissing the accusations as propaganda from Kinshasa. The renewed violence has strained diplomatic relations in the region, with the Congolese government accusing Rwanda of destabilizing eastern Congo to control its vast mineral wealth. As of 2024, the M23 remains a dominant force in eastern Congo, controlling large swaths of North Kivu province, including key towns such as Bunagana, Kiwanja, Rutshuru, Kibumba, and Tongo. These locations are strategically important as they provide access to trade routes, military supply lines, and key mineral-rich areas. Bunagana, a border town with Uganda, serves as a major transit point for goods and fighters, while Rutshuru and Kiwanja are critical hubs for controlling movement in the region. Recent reports indicate that M23 has launched a major offensive and successfully recaptured Goma, the capital of North Kivu province. The fall of Goma is a significant blow to the Congolese government and signals the continued strength of M23, despite international condemnation. The city, a vital economic and administrative center, is now under the group's control, worsening an already dire humanitarian crisis. Thousands of civilians are fleeing as clashes intensify between M23 and Congolese forces, backed by regional allies. Efforts to negotiate a ceasefire have repeatedly failed, as the Congolese government, regional powers, and international actors struggle to find a lasting solution. Despite multiple peace talks mediated by the East African Community and the African Union, particularly South Africa. In early 2025, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa publicly criticized Rwanda's alleged support for M23, calling for greater regional cooperation to address the crisis. In response, Rwandan President Paul Kagame accused South Africa of meddling in Rwanda's affairs and failing to understand the complexities of the conflict. Kagame reiterated Rwanda's stance that its actions in the DRC are motivated by security concerns, particularly the threat posed by Hutu militias like the FDLR. South Africa has been directly involved in the conflict as part of the Southern African Development Community, the SDC mission, which supports the Congolese army against M23. This involvement has come at a cost. In February 2025, 14 South African National Defense Force soldiers were killed in clashes with M23 rebels, highlighting the dangers of the mission and the group's growing strength. The conflict has had devastating humanitarian consequences. Over 1.5 million people have been displaced since 2021, fleeing relentless violence and massacres. Refugee camps are overflowing, and food shortages are widespread. Entire villages have been burned down, and reports of sexual violence, forced recruitment of child soldiers, and mass killings are rampant. Meanwhile, the global economy remains deeply connected to the conflict. Western nations, including the United States, European Union, and China, continue to trade with Rwanda, indirectly financing the war. The region is home to vast deposits of coltan, cobalt, and gold, which are essential for electronics, batteries, and green energy technologies. This has made Eastern Congo a battleground for armed groups, foreign interests, and multinational corporations, prolonging instability. With no clear resolution in sight, the M23 crisis is just one piece of the larger conflict that has kept the Democratic Republic of Congo in a near-constant state of war for decades. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to our channel and leave a like on the video.